Okay, councillors and gallery, may I claim your attention, please. Good evening. I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council, and please note that this meeting is being webcast live over the internet on the council's website. Councillors will be available after the meeting, including myself, if any member of the gallery wishes to discuss issues of interest. I'll start with a prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong Rotary people and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and future. There is no apologies for this evening's meeting. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the meetings as listed? Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Wilmot. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryan. All those in favour? For? Against? Carried. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest this evening? The council conducts its meetings accordingly to the consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration for this evening's meeting that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for discussion this evening are item 1, the petition for public toilet, Rotary Park, Pakenham, as withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council continue to liaise with the Rotary Club of Pakenham members to facilitate the installation of the proposed public toilet at Rotary Park, Pakenham, and respond to the head petitioner advising them of the funding now committed by the federal government and by Council to implement the new public toilet.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryan. Back to the mover, Councillor Schilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ryan, for seconding this response to the petition. The reason behind this critical piece of infrastructure may not be immediately obvious to a person who's not involved with the area around the Tumark Reserve or around Rotary Park. However, when you consider the increased usage for the reserve and surrounding areas such as park run and also more leisurely activities such as dog walking groups, you begin to see the need for new modern state-of-the-art toilet facilities. The closest public toilet to that area around the park run area where it's held is on Tumark Reserve between the two ovals, and not only is it out of its way, the toilet is dreadful in every sense, and that's probably another piece of work that Council need to look into. There's a little bit of history to this petition. Council and councillors have met with Rotary on site, and there has been discussion over a few years around some increased infrastructure within Rotary Park. And we did receive a petition from the Rotary Club that was signed by 702 people. Thank you, Mayor. And look, and that really does show the interest in this facility and the need for this upgrade. But we've had some great developments over the past few months with the federal government committing $180,000, which will actually fund the toilet itself. And council have committed $26,000, and that's to connect the toilet to local services, which is very important when you're installing a new toilet. I would like to thank everyone that has gotten behind this project. This isn't a project that was on Council's radar. This is something that Council hadn't considered, and it's only through the ongoing advocacy of the local Rotary group and community members that we're here tonight, and we can actually provide a positive response to the petition that this toilet will in fact be funded from a combination of federal and council funds. So that's all I'd like to say on that, and I look forward to hearing other councillors' views on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Well said. To the seconder is Councillor Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. And I'm in support of this petition in getting a toilet erected on the grounds there. Sometimes we don't always look at the necessity of toilets. Sometimes we look at, well, surely they can go on their walk and then go home. But a lot of people within that communal area do have disabilities or are seniors, and sometimes their needs are a lot more intense than someone that's a lot younger in age that doesn't have the deficits that they have. So to me, it is an area that is quite important to have facilities there, and to encourage the health and well-being of people walking and interacting and communicating, as well as dogs, dog friendly. But also I support Councillor Schilling in the fact that Tumac grounds, the toilets there are absolutely atrocious, and I've been to the market and held stalls there. The disability toilet there's been a lock there over the last couple of years that has never been fixed, but it has been reported. I'd like to see, yes, that on the radar and improved as well, because if that's the only toilet that our community has at the time, going for a walk in that park along there using that one toilet, then I don't think that's good enough. I think we need to really advocate, and hopefully we can get some funding to improve the toilet there as well. So that's all I have to say through you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Well said. Any other councillors to speak? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the ward councillors that have already spoken on this item. I definitely support a public toilet going into this area. I want to thank the Rotary Club with their amazing efforts they've done over many years at Rotary Park. Just the name says it all about their commitment to this park and reserve. This is a very busy place. You've got a park run there that operates there every week, every Saturday about 8 a.m. or at 8 a.m. 5K run, and I've done it several times. It's a fantastic event. You get over 200 people attending this event on a Saturday morning. And I've experienced myself, when my son and I was doing this run, that on the return lap, he needed to go to the toilet. And lucky, he's a boy, and it was a bit easier. But that's how families are, this is the problem that families are experiencing using this great reserve. And we want people to spend a lot of time at this reserve, but at the moment it's limited about, if they need to use a facility, they have to leave. So by investing in this public toilet, that will ensure that people can stay longer. We know that we've got an off-leash dog park right there, and Council is going to further enhance the facilities there at the off-leash dog area. So we want people to stay. We know we've got a very active Cardinia dog group that meets there on a regular basis, and having a toilet there will ensure that they can be looked after and use the facilities when required. So I want to thank obviously, as I said, the Rotary and also the local member, Mr. Jason Wood. It was, I believe, an election commitment. So thank you, Mr. Jason Wood, and thank you to Council for committing to this as well. This was discussed during the Council's budget process at the last budget process, and so I'm glad that we are committing to this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you. Any other councillors to speak on this item? Councillor Ross, of course.
I'd like to echo my fellow councillors' sentiments on this matter. If you have a look at the leash-free dog area, that was down that end of Pakenham when it first started. A chap named Ed Kirby came up with the idea, and they really didn't have any facilities except he offered his time to walk with dogs leash-free. For those certain groups, this is essential that they do have facilities for them when they go walking. Also too, it's the main linkage that goes between the Princess Highway and Henry Road. So the more people use that linkage as our population comes, the more facilities we need to provide. And no greater example can be used of the amount of money council spends on so many other facilities that we take into account that need to be thought at really well, like sporting facilities. We're always trying to cater for the needs of those areas. Likewise, people who are into passive recreation need to have facilities as well. And that was pointed out with Councillor Ryan, who spoke about people with disabilities needing it, Councillor Owen with family issues, and Councillor Michael Schilling, who pointed out as well different areas that are in need in this area. I must say, parkrun for the participants and the volunteers, and I see Mr. Jack Mitchell in the crowd, who's done over 100 park runs as a volunteer. He would know firsthand just how many people use it. And sometimes there's over 200 people who actually are in the park run, and they take their families, their kids, and everyone turn up down there. And I can tell you, when it's icy cold in the morning, and I've actually done it over 10 times myself, the park run, you do need facilities. And I know that the park run group have tried in the past to get the local primary school across the way to open their facilities, but for security reasons, they just can't let people come in and use those facilities. So therefore, this is of urgent need, and I must say it would be remiss of myself not to mention that the Rotary Club of Pakenham, who had the bridge built there, which is being rebuilt, they put the rotunda in there, and they do a whole lot of really good things in the community that council couldn't. But nevertheless, they're the ones who bring these things up. They go and raise money. I've seen our own mayor stand out so many times at barbecues on the microphone when it used to be out the front of Safeway there, trying to raise money for all their different local things that they do. So I must say, this is great that we've got some extra money to turn it into a really good facility. Council are putting in some money too, so hopefully all those people will have their needs met and they'll be able to move on from this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Well said. Any other speakers on this subject? Before I go back to the mover, I'd just like to also mention that I have a lot of support for this with the Rotary Club of Pakenham, of course, being involved in Rotary as I was, and thank you, Councillor Ross, for your comments. There was a notice of a letter that was actually put on there as well from the EW Tipping House, which is the disability support group, which is fantastic, and they actually go there quite often as well. And of course, that's where it really comes to play with these toilet facilities of, particularly with people with disabilities, and that from all ages. Can also mention the member for General, Brad Batten, also was very supportive of this through the Rotary Club also, and so he had a lot to do with the helping the Rotary Club and the 700. When you got a petition with 700 signatures on it, it is quite a difficult document to ignore. So I take my hat off to the Rotary Club for their hard work and getting those numbers down on those petitions, and the people that signed that are supporting this group. Because I went past there the other day onto another function last Saturday morning, and I wondered what the people were there, because it was raining. It was teeming with rain, and they were there, rain, hail or shine, doing this park run. We have to support this. It's only 28,000, I think, is our contribution, and so it's a great result for what we're doing from council. So it's a great news story, I think. Across to you. I'll go back to the mover now, Councillor Schilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the support from all the other councillors who spoke in the room. Look, yeah. Just to rehash, it's a great project. I'd also like to once again thank the Rotary Club. And I think it's important in a growth corridor that we are listening to residents, and we're also pushing ahead in advocating for what our more established communities require. We have a lot of new development going up around the Shire, and sometimes it might feel like to the community that that's all we're focused on is the new developments and the new houses and the new sporting pavilions. And look, and they are all important, but the point is that we can get them right the first time. As our community grows, there will be increased pressure on some of our essential services in the older areas of Pakenham. So it's important that Central Ward councillors continue to advocate for that, which we have in that park. And I'm very happy with the outcome, and the funding is finally being able to be secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Okay, all those in favour? For? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Item number 3, the Community Capital Works grants, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following. That 1, Council approve the 2019-20 recommended Community Capital Works grants allocations. 2, the successful grant recipients be advised, and formal announcements of the successful grant recipients be made at the Community Capital Works Grants presentation evening being held on the 27th of August this year. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Springfield. Back to you, Councillor Owen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. The 2019-20 round of the Community Capital Works Grants program received 34 applications, 8 from preschools, 19 from sporting clubs, active reserves, 4 from community centres, halls, 1 passive reserve and 2 not applicable. The major equipment grants had 4 applications with 3 supported and one not eligible. So after rigorous assessment of the 32 capital works projects eligibility and in the meeting the guidelines, the assessment panel supported a total allocation of $331,481. I want to thank those councillors on the grants committee, a massive job. So that was Councillor Ray Brown, Councillor Jeff Springfield and Councillor Carol Ryan. I've been on that committee before, and it's a really hard job, and it takes a lot of time to really go through those applications, so thank you to those councillors. This year we saw an increase of applications than last year, and it's fair to say last year I was disappointed. There was a lot of money remaining from the bucket that was available, and we awarded I think 19, and this year we had 34 applications, so that is a great result. I was a bit concerned. The trend that we're going, less and less groups applying, the difficulty around applying for grants. So I think Council really stepped up the way we assisted community groups. We've still got some challenges, and we live in a world of risk and OH&S, and we got briefed on that recently, and unfortunately this will continue to be a barrier for our community groups, but we're committed to working with our community groups to allow them to apply for this grant so we can improve our facilities using volunteer help and assistance. So great to see additional applications from kindergartens. I know last year that was very limited. I think only Beaconsfield Kindergarten applied, and now we've got more. So that is a good result. So there is a surplus, and some of that remaining funds will go out to some priorities of council. These sort of lists of projects may include bathroom stalls in all kindergartens, servicing and replacement where required of all shade sails and structures, access works in line with Cardinia's universal access matrix, and replacement and updating of signage across the community places facilities, and an upgrade of the Lakeside Children's Centre community room outdoor space. So I just want to thank all those community groups. We'll announce those successful recipients at the Community Capital Works Grants presentation evening on the 27th of August. It's a really good night that groups come together, they celebrate their success, learn from other volunteers about how to run these sort of projects and learn from any mistakes and so forth that they've experienced. But it's a great night, and I ask councillors, I encourage you for your comments and support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Well said. To the seconder, Councillor Springfield. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen. This is one of the better parts of our job, I think, that I've found over the last 3 years being on council, is when we can, give some money back to the community that's giving so much to our little local society that we have here in Cardinia. It's a wonderful thing to see the diverse nature of the groups, the community groups, the sporting clubs, the kindergartens and preschools and such. They've put forward worthy projects that we're very happy to support, because in supporting them, we're supporting the wider community to be connected and enjoy these facilities that they do. So it is really one of the better parts of the jobs to do this. As Councillor Owen pointed out, it was undersubscribed this year somewhat, but at least being undersubscribed means that we don't have to make the hard decisions of denying some people and having some cut-off points towards who gets it, who doesn't. So very worthy causes here. I'm tempted to name some, but I won't, because I think they're yet to be informed until we go through this process tonight, and then and I look forward to the night that's coming up soon for the event when we award the recipients for their grants. So thank you very much, Mayor, and Councillor Owen. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Councillor Ryan, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. That threw me then. I thought you were going to call Councillor Brown instead. I just want to follow through with the my fellow councillors. Again, I'd like to thank the team of officers that worked with us. It's not an easy job for them to go through process and then inform us colleagues that what we need to do and how to go about it. But they were they explained everything very clearly. But it doesn't always flow as nicely as everyone thinks. We all have our vision of how we see things with the capital grants, and so our visions sometimes we need to negotiate quite intensely with some of these issues. I think the biggest thing that's come out of our meetings continually is that people within the community are probably quite unsure about the paperwork, and they have difficulty with the paperwork. It can be quite complex, which sometimes can put people off even applying for these grants. I'd like to encourage them more because the team is here to assist you in any way, and I think it's really important to know that there are grants out there for very important identities, and I think we need that diversity within our community, that we're giving the opportunities there. I'd like to also thank my fellow councillors, Councillor Brown, Councillor Springfield, for being part of the team as well. I think that's pretty much it. Just please don't not apply. There's always someone there to help. So thank you very much for the community to even apply for the grants. Thank you.
Hold on, Councillor Ryan, thank you. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the value that the community gets out of this amazing rollout of capital works, community capital works grants, for the $331,000 approximately. In the past, we've shown and done some research into the developments that have come out of these things, and often they're dollar for dollar value put in by the community groups with the council's partnership. And it would come out that the community would get a benefit of, if it was doubled, $660,000, while the ratepayers only needed to put in half. And I must say, this collaboration between the two and the ownership between council and the community groups who put in really does build upon the community's assets. And I must say, most of these projects would not go ahead without the partnership between the two. So that's an amazing asset. And the community does take ownership in these projects, and that is a really wonderful thing. It should be noted too that the council had the close of applications on the 4th of March, and at the time there was only 7 applications that had come in. We had the Bunyip bushfires, which were in full recovery mode at that time. And I must say, it was really good to see that the council officers went out and spoke to the groups that they thought might be interested and not let it go through to the keeper. And after a 2-week extension, we went from 7 applications to 34 applications. So I think that is really good that they read the tea leaves and they knew that they needed to do something better in this space. Because as Councillor Owen pointed out, it is extremely sad as councillors when we put in budgets things to go into the community to benefit the community, but unfortunately for whatever reason we don't catch them at the right time for them to put in their applications, because these people are passionate and they want to do amazing things with their facilities and to grow participation. And when I look through some of the different groups, we have preschools, we have sporting clubs, we have active reserves, we have 4 community centres and halls, 1 passive reserve, just to name a few who have benefited from it. And I think that's really what we're here for as a council, to make sure that we spend our money as wisely as we can and we give back to the community in the best way that we can help them out. Anyway, I urge my fellow councillors to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I support all of the comments made by my fellow councillors, and I acknowledge Councillor Springfield and Councillor Ryan, but in particular the officers working on these grants. It's not an easy job, They just don't get an application and stamp it not applicable, or you fail. They chase the people up. They explain to them. The applicants sometimes take notice, sometimes they don't, and the ones that were not successful were the ones that didn't, because there was no need for it to be undersubscribed if they took the advice of the officers, who tried all ends up to make sure that people did take advantage of these grants. I expect now that they will apply next year, now that they have this additional knowledge, but I'd just like to say that I'm very impressed and grateful to the work that the officers do in this regard. Not just these grants, but the other particular grants as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other speakers? And I also echo the words of Councillor Ryan and Councillor Brown in particular, of the staff, what they do in guiding our community into getting these grants down. Sometimes it's a pretty daunting place to be as a community. And sure, we have a responsibility to get these community grants down right. We've got insurances and we have things to follow, procedures to follow. So it is really great to have a great team in that region. So I echo your kind words. I'll go back to Councillor Owen to sum up. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. It was definitely remiss of me not to mention the staff, so I apologise to the staff for not mentioning that when I introduced the item. But the support came from right across the organisation, staff from Child and Community Services, Environment, Buildings and Facilities, Active Communities, Engineering, Municipal Building Surveyors and Community Strengthening. So thank you to those. So I move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you. So all those in favour signify in the usual manner. For, against, carried. Thank you, councillors. Item number 4 is the Major Projects Report, as withdrawn by Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, I go to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Major Project Report be noted, please.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Schilling. Back to you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Projects Report, I guess, is the catalyst for most of us councillors here, that we look upon our wards and we see these things happening, not just our wards but right across the Shire. 26 projects listed on this report, 9 pavilions, 2 recreation reserves, the Hills Hub, Cardinia Cultural Centre, the Black Spot Works, solar panels for this building, and also some neighbourhood parks. We look to have a busy time coming up because most of these are due to be completed 2019, with a couple at 2020, and some say September, and I think that we may be struggling to meet that commitment. However, if you're going to do it, you may as well do it right, so I don't mind waiting a little bit longer. One I'm really excited about really is the Deep Creek Reserve, which is off Cameron Way, inconspicuous little street that if you travel down the street, which I did, and I can remember when I was first on council and we went down and had a look at that, early days, and we turned up at this big paddock, and Councillor Owen turned up in his battered old Ford, and the minister was there and he had all these papers and he outlaid them, and it was just paddocks. And if you go now a couple of years later and see what's there, you'll be amazed, really. It comprises of 3 parts. The Deep Creek Reserve Nursery and Education Centre is part of it, but the main part of it is the development of the site, which is a 48 hectare site, completely redeveloped, will include new paths and car park, development of infrastructure, include a sustainable environment complex, new golf club rooms for the golfers, all abilities playground, Indigenous plant nursery, wetland and educational facilities. A kickabout area, I don't know what a kickabout area is, but I suppose it's kick a football area, I don't know, kickabout area. Car park and associated drainage and Melbourne water wetlands. Ready for public access by spring 2019. Looking at the works, they're well advanced, and I would hope that this could come to pass in spring. The play garden is complete. car parks complete, the lighting, the golf cart shed, drainage, kickabout area, all of those are complete. Final play items are due to be installed, and then I guess it can be open. There's still a lot of landscaping to be done around the place, which can be done after it's open, I guess, but there's quite an amount of detailed landscaping to be done. Really excited about the nursery and education centre. It's a huge project. It's construction of a community-driven Indigenous plant nursery, including outdoor education space, retail display garden, propagation facilities, irrigation shade houses and greenhouses to grow the plants. These plants, when they're produced, will be sent all over Victoria, purchased, I guess, by authorities, and the amount of plants or Indigenous trees and that's going to come out of this area is quite massive, really. It's jointly funded by Council and the Andrews Foundation, this project. Currently, the steel framing is still being erected. The off-site manufacture of the greenhouses and the power cabling to the site is still to be done. But there are minor jobs to be done to bring it into public access by spring. Then this is complemented by the Education Centre, which is part of the golf club. It's a huge facility. It's going to be multi-shared, combining the ecological values, education and sport. The building combines the requirements of the Pakenham and District Golf Club and the Cardinia Environment Coalition, the CEC. It'll incorporate separate and shared spaces for the golf club and those users, including a multifunction room, lounge, dining, bar, area, cafe, everything you find in a golf club, clubhouse, if you like, which are good places to spend some time, Mayor. The part about it is the education rooms that will be made available to the nursery and the people at the education centre, where they can hold seminars and they can train and instruct and educate the schools and other people in what the nursery does and how they can contribute to the ecological things about the Shire that we need and what's being produced there. What's still got to happen there, everything's underway now except the following is the fireplace detail, the bar and the food, cool room, kitchen bar servery fit out and painting etc, driveway and the entrance and external ceiling. That is a major project that's right in the middle of Pakenham. Down Cameron Way, you would not even know it's there unless you travel down that street. So I urge everybody to go down there. In particular, the playground. The playground is complete and it's quite unique. It's got what's that? A dragonfly structure. I can never remember what it is. Call it what? Graham dragonfly. Yep. Flaps its wings and makes a lot of noise. The dragonflies do. And it's got slides and it's got everything and it's got barbecue areas and all that and it's great for the public and it should be open now, but we can't open it because we need the supporting building infrastructure around it. The Cardinia Cultural Centre, stage 1 of 3 stages, is due completion in August this year, which is next month, Mayor. That consists of art space, foyer improvements, dance and rehearsal rooms. It's funded jointly by Council and the Victorian Government Growing Suburbs Fund. Progress of the project is all steel work has been completed, external cladding, all services, some new car parks and internal walls have been fitted. An update on that is the internal fit outs continuing, toilets, external ground works continuing. And so in this building here, what's taking place here is we're having solar panels installed. Engineering people are examining and recommending structural alterations to the roof to support that solar panel electrical system, complete this year. And there's a couple of neighbourhood parks that are funded by the developers that are coming on stream in this year. One is at Cardinia Neighbourhood Park, that's developer funded, $1 million landscape embellishment. And the other one is at Arcadia Neighbourhood Reserve, developed and delivered, 1.5 million. And the theme for that is where the wild things are. So, Mayor, that might be a chance. Yeah. It consists of tree sculptures, flying fox swings, climbing frames, and skate zone. All structures have been installed. Some delay with the wetland works because of the weather. Due completion late 2019. So there's plenty happening, Mayor. I could go through them all, but I won't because time's getting on. But as I said before, 2019, the remainder of 2019 and early 2020 are going to be very busy times, and you'll probably open a couple of these. Eh? So thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for your consideration of time and your kind thoughts as well. I'll go to Councillor Schilling. Second. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown, for comprehensively outlining some of those very important projects. I'd just like to say, look, it is an important report for residents to read. When people ask me what's happening around council, there are probably 3 documents that to get your head around, or just to even look at for a few minutes, and it will give you a really good idea. The first one is look at the council budget, which was adopted at the last meeting, which will tell you what we're going to fund. Look at the council plan to see the direction of the council, and then finally look at the activity report. This report, because you'll see everything in the budget being built. So there are 3 important documents just to every so often glance your eyes over. There's not too much activity in, obviously big infrastructure projects take a while to build. So in the major projects report, even what Kipping and I, each council meeting, you'll start to see slow progress and see us build out our program that we've budgeted. So thank you again, Councillor Brown, for speaking on this. And once again, I just encourage people to have a look at that because it gives you a really good idea of what's happening around the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Ross. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add about the Deep Creek Reserve facility. This project on a greenfield site with the golf course being there is something that inspired me actually to be on council. Initially, this area was handed over to council as part of an open space handover for some development back in the early 70s, and council held this parcel of land and had the golf course on there from then. Then council went into and sold it to Pete & Co, but it needed the planning application to go through. Long story short, many of the community were up in arms that this open space recreation that was meant to be kept preserved for that was going to be sold. Great long story short, it was overturned, the decision, and I was proud to see that I know that myself and Councillor Owen were part of that. I don't know whether the Mayor was here at the time when that was done, but I must say that was an amazing decision. But the problem was it was left as an open space with an old golf club on it. Council had bought the McGregor Road site to move the golf course down there. It was going to be houses from Princess Highway all the way to the train lines. But what we needed to do was this space needed to be filled with something for the community to take ownership, because otherwise it was just waiting, sitting there as a sitting duck for someone to come along to have a solution. I must say, it took council a long time to try and work through the issue, to try and find homes for people and to develop the site into something better and something they could be really proud of and take ownership of, particularly down the wetlands down the back. I must say, for anyone who had doubt, and I must say I had doubt that we could find a solution that would have so many winners at the end of it, this is an amazing place. And for those who had the foresight to say that it should be left for open space recreation, to see the different groups who will use this, I echo my fellow councillors in saying it is an amazing site. And for the amount of diversity and groups that will find a home there, people cannot be but impressed. And it's only stage 1 of the development down there. There will be more. People will love this and they will take ownership, and it will be there for the longevity which was set out initially by those original people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other councillors to speak? Councillor Breadon. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly about the Officer Rec Reserve number 2 Western Oval reconstruction. I was there over the weekend, and it was great to see that that project progressed. Grass will be sort of sown with ryegrass, I think, initially during the winter, spring, and then it'll be oversown with other grasses. But it looks fantastic. But what I really want to highlight is the dam. The cost of water in watering our ovals will be a massive challenge for our community groups and also Shire, as you know, we manage our own reserves as well. Not all communities of management run our reserves. So this is a huge cost, the cost of water. So I know the club, we're really wanting a increased dam capacity so they can use the water runoff from the ovals into this dam. And I just think this is one way that we can reduce the cost. So I'm hoping the council will look at this as an example and see how we may use similar sort of ideas for other reserves, because this will reduce the costs associated with watering this oval. Another one was on page 57, the Black Spot project, installation of W-beam safety barriers at Paternoster Road in Cockatoo in the hills. So this project is the installation of profiled audio tactile edge lines along the entire section of Paternoster Road and installation of W-beam safety barriers at 2 accident-prone locations identified as black spots. This is a Vic Roads fully funded project through the Black Spot program, but I know over the years Rangers Ward councillors have been receiving a number of emails and a number of residents advocating for these improvements. So it's great that this project is finally getting off the ground in improving safety in the hills. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Well done. Any other speakers on this subject of major projects? No one. Okay, I would like to highlight about the Deep Creek Reserve. It's one of my favourites. It's so close to Pakenham, yet it's in the Port Ward area, which I think is very attractive. And people wouldn't know that really if generally looked around. You'll think it was right in Central Ward, but it's not. It's actually in Port Ward. It used to be in Central Ward, but we stole that area, which is fantastic. And it's going to be a proud moment if I have the opportunity, Councillor Brown, dead right, to open that wonderful facility. It'll be fantastic. The thing I would like to highlight, though, is the actual disability state-of-the-art toilet they have there. That goes hand in hand with we're right onto toilets tonight, aren't we? All over the place. So, but it goes hand in hand with that park, and I think acknowledging that we need to have that sort of facility go with a park of that nature, of that significance, is fantastic. Now it's connected to the building, the main building of the golf club. So that's why the park is not open, just to let the residents know that the park is not open because it hasn't got the facility of the toilet block to be able to use it, utilise the whole block. So that won't be finished until the golf club's finished. So that's why the delay in opening of the park and that area. So that's a major thing to understand. Anyway, I'll go back to Councillor Brown to sum up. Councillor Brown.
Nothing further to add, Mayor, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and thank you, councillors, for your input. So I will signify in the usual manner, all those for the recommendation. For? Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Item number 6. Notice of motion we have tonight. Number 1044, withdrawn by Councillor Collin Ross. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the motion number 6, 1044, that in regard to the sporting facilities standards policy adopted by Council at its meeting held on the 17th of June, where the resolution was that Council adopts the 2019 sports facility standards policy and appendix, including and endorsing modified option 3, which will involve designing and constructing facilities in accordance with the State Sporting Association standards for each sport, and providing A, 100 square metres of social space for all sports, not including neighbourhood facilities. B, 90 square metres of external covering viewing areas for all sports, not including neighbourhood facilities. And C, up to an additional 15 square metres to each change room for Australian rules football facilities. That points A and B of this motion be altered to read: A, up to 100 square metres of social space for all sports, not including neighbourhood facilities, and B, up to 90 square metres of external covering viewing areas of all sports, not including neighbourhood facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Schilling. Back to you, Councillor Ross, the mover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I must say, on the night, I had reservations about the policy that came up, and I just couldn't find the solution at the time. I thought that we needed to, I realised that we need to give council officers, councillors, more a guideline and scope around what they can put into the facilities that we're building. One of my concerns was at the time that that we basically had a couple of things in there that dictated that 100 square metres of social space for all sports and 90 square metres of extra covering of viewing areas for all sports. This was a real concern because we don't have many facilities that actually have that now. So we were going to have to incorporate this into potentially all of our facilities. Councillor Brown on the night came up with a solution for a portion of it, which was he had it amended to read up to an additional 15 square metres of each change room. Now, what I want to do is bring it in line with that part there, which says up to 100 square metres and up to 90 square metres. What this will actually do, this will give council officers some guidelines around what they can go up to. It will give councillors some scope to argue the case why something needs to be, through usage and through needs, argue a case why a facility should have greater than the minimum. And also too, it will give, and most importantly, the community or the user groups an ability to come to council and talk with us about why they believe the usage and the needs of a facility dictates why they should have up to those. Now, in effect, we do this in a way at the moment where council, we have groups come to council, they argue, and we tinker with things at the moment. This was going to carte blanche, the previous one, give an additional millions of dollars into this without even going through the motion. But this will give us a capacity to go up to that with these groups having some guidance and an ability to argue their case. Anyway, I hope my fellow councillors will support this. I see this as something that more people can support than coming through on a minimum at the last council meeting, and I hope it can be supported. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Ross. Councillor Schilling, seconded to speak. Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and I support Councillor Ross's notice of motion tonight to amend the current policy. I think the wording around Councillor Ross's new this notice of motion is a much more pragmatic case-by-case approach compared to the automatic blanket of space and funding we're going to be committing clubs to, despite their size or the needs of the individual user groups. So, look, I think that tightening up of this wording still gives flexibility to clubs to advocate for space, and let's admit there will be some sporting codes that do need more social space than others, but it's not automatically committing councillors, Councillor Ross said, to millions of extra dollars when, as it is, we're in a rate cap environment and we do have to watch our funding and make sure that everyone gets a fair share of the ratepayers' dollar. So look, I'll be supporting Councillor Ross's motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Carol Ryan. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. And I also will support this notice of motion, Councillor Ross. And it is about a needs basis. If we don't change this and keep this to a level where we are watching the funding and where it's going, it's about equality too. It's always about equality, and there are some old buildings that don't have that luxury, and the new facilities do have a lot more space. But the wording up to and that clarifies it a lot more than, and there's no mistake in understanding up to and what it means. But again, it's about councillors watching the funding and making sure that it is equality for our community. So thank you, Mayor, through you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any other speakers on the subject? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm a bit unsure about this this notice of motion tonight, because whilst I understand and I commend Councillor Ross for trying to put a limit on what we're spending money on here, and I support that. I didn't support the motion when it came through the last council meeting. I didn't support it. But my concern is, and I'm hoping that Councillor Ross will be able to clarify this in his summing up, and then I might feel a little bit more comfortable. Whilst Councillor Brown at the last meeting had an additional 15 square metres per change room, he had a base that you could go above, the additional 15 metres above. At the moment, we're saying we'll go up to 100 square metres of social space, but from what's the base? Where's the base level? So if Councillor Ross can explain whether it's going to be the standards that each sporting code recommends in their policies, or is it going back to our previous policy of, I think it was 80 square metres for social space, or 90 square metres, whatever it was. Where are we starting from? What's the base? That's my concern, and until that's clear in my mind, I won't be able to support this one. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I too support what Councillor Wilmot is saying. We haven't got a base, so who decides what the minimum is? Because groups are different. Do we take into account the fact that a group are going to grow? Do we look at them now and say you've got 4 members, so you only need 10 square metres? Or do we say you've got 10 square metres now, you convince us that you need a lot more? And who's going to judge that? It's going to put a lot more pressure on officers, I think. I would prefer just to see the up to. I prefer to see it remain the same, to be quite frank. I do think there is merit, though, in the fact that if you've got a club with 3 or 4 members, 90 square metres of outside cover seems excessive. So I think you've got to have some way of knowing where your starting point is. So I've got no problems with the motion in respect of up to, but I share with Councillor Wilmot of the starting point. Where do we start? What do we call a minimum for an organisation? That to me is the sticking point with this. Thank you, Mayor.
I don't know where I'm going. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Jodie Owen.
Thanks, Mayor. I actually agree with Councillor Wilmot and Councillor Brown on this matter. For me, we do need to have some base, because just saying up to 100 square metres, as Councillor Brown rightly pointed out, you know, how do we work out equality for that? Councillor Ryan also mentioned equality in what we do for our sporting club. So I think we need a basis and then go from there, where if we just say everybody gets up to, where do we begin from? So I won't be supporting this notice motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and to my colleagues who have all spoken before me. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to make an assumption that I'm going to put out to everyone. How I read it, it's going to be constructed facilities in accordance with the State Sporting Associated standards for each sport, and providing up to the 100 square metres of social space and up to 90 square metres of external space. So I believe the minimum standard would be set within the social sporting standards of Victoria. Government policy, which if we went through the bigger policy last time that we're adopting, there is different minimum standards for different sporting for different sports. So my understanding from reading this would be that those minimum standards would come off our state sporting facilities standards policy, which is the guideline for many of the other elements within the standards policy. Is my understanding. And with that in mind, I am supportive of Councillor Ross's motion. I think I was supportive of the previous one, but I think this one gives us a bit more clarity of making those decisions at the time when perhaps it's not always needed to be 100 square metres for a social space, depending on the size of the sporting groups and such. I do empathise and understand it can create more work for council officers when we have to make the decisions of how that comes about, but I think that's what we're here for, is to try and make these decisions as councillors in the best interests of our communities that are around us at the time that it comes forward to a decision to be made. So yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Well said. Any other speakers on this subject? Councillor Breton. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, all councillors, for your comments. So can I ask a question to the officers about what Councillor Springfield did say? That obviously in the bigger document we had each sport sort of highlighted, which talked about certain areas of metre squared for certain aspects of a pavilion. Can we get clarification from the relevant officer, if that's okay, that as what Councillor Springfield did say, is that it's already in that proposed motion, that in line with what the sports guidelines do say, but with the addition of up to if it's in the appropriate circumstances. Can I just get that clarification, please?
Yes, you can. Councillor, who would like to volunteer, Tracy? Sorry, Tracy. It's a question on without notice is the issue here, councillors, and can be a difficult one to answer, but I'm sure Tracy will endeavour to answer your question.
I'm not 100% on your question, so I'll try and answer what I think you're asking. In the draft, the sports facility standards that we presented to the June meeting, we did indicate for the various sporting codes what, based on whether they were regional, neighbourhood, district, what the minimum standards were under those particular sporting codes. So in that document we did go through and list, Australian rules and baseball and everything else, and provide that figure of what their sporting code actually indicated as being the amount of space that they would require. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but
That's
yeah.
a minimum space we're talking. I'll ask the CEO add something to this for you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to add to Ms. Parker's answer. So the policy that's been adopted by council has by sport how much community / social space, and in varying amounts depending on the sport. So as well as the facilities in the hierarchy, whether they're regional or local, by sport. So Councillor Springfield's correct, I understand, that the existing policy already caters for that.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Breton. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, officers, and thank you, Councillor Springfield. I think that gives me comfort that there's a minimum and up to, and that's what I wanted in such a policy, to have that clarification. I thought there was a bit of grey in previous policies, and it's all about fairness, and if you can demonstrate that you need the additional space because you've got a large club, you've got a large number of players, you can demonstrate that. So I'm comfortable now that we've got a minimum and a maximum guideline. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Brown. You've already spoken. You cannot have two shots. Sorry. Before I go back to Councillor Ross about his notice of motion, yes, okay, I think the words fairness that I can hear. This is creating fairness, and I think maybe it's got some merit, but I'll leave it up to the councillors to vote in the usual manner. But I'll go back to you, Councillor Ross, to sum up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say it's interesting listening to everybody share their ideas on this matter. Initially, it was interesting to hear that I thought people were voting against the initial, more talking about the initial policy that had been passed through rather than the amendments that I had wanted to go up to. My understanding was that there would be a base level, exactly what was explained, that if you've got a sporting club like a darts club or somebody else who would have a standard that they need to play sport, that the council facility would be built, at least up to that, because otherwise, how could you build a facility that you couldn't play at? I mean, you finish up with something like we had at Emerald, where we had a netball facility that didn't have the runoff space around the outside, so you couldn't actually play competitive sport there. So you had an old netball court and they couldn't play anymore. So my understanding was always that there would be a minimum that a code would require to be built, and our officers would take that into account. But this amendment that I'm looking to have put in place would give the user group or the sport or the councillors scope to argue the case, because we have some facilities, as an example, say you've got a facility like Upper Beaconsfield or Cardinia ground, and for a lot of the time their permanent home is one cricket club who uses it. For six months of the year, it's not used by anybody else. And they might have X amount of teams. So they could argue their case why they should have something that big. But if you've got a facility that's got 18 junior teams and 6 senior teams and 8 cricket teams playing at the one facility, and then you mix in with it women's football playing at the same facility too, then you finish up with young kids that are doing their Vic kick at the same time, where they play 2 or 3 games on the same ground at the same time. So when all the kids come in, as Councillor Owen has spoken to about before, why are these club rooms so full? Because you've got 3 games on the one ground at the one time, and all the kids come in and they need a facility. Now, if that's the case, this gives people an ability to go up to a maximum to increase the size of the facility that they need in these 2 areas, coming in line with the other up to things. So we have a minimum and we have a maximum. That gives a little bit more certainty around the council officers, some scope. It gives councillors some more scope, and it gives the community a case to come forward and argue their case. And okay, it does create more work for the officers, but I must say we can only spend the money once. So the more we spend on things that we enforce ourselves to put in, the less we have for somewhere else. And Councillor Ryan is right, that the needs are great. We only have a pie that's so big, so the more we give into spaces that we don't need to, but nevertheless we'll give scope to put it there if it's needed, we'll be meeting the needs of the community. Anyway, I'd like to think my fellow councillors can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Right, we'll move to summed up. We're going to vote on the notice of motion, Councillor Ross's notice of motion. All those signify in the usual manner. For the motion? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7. Notice of motion. It's item 7. Notice of motion 1045, as withdrawn by Councillor Jodie Owen. I believe, Councillor Jodie Owen, I understand that you want to withdraw this notice of motion, and with a possible opportunity to resubmit at a later date in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you. Well, that concludes discussion on the items withdrawn. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendations of the balance of items listed? Can I have a mover? Councillor Jodie Owen. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wilmot. All those in favour? For? Against? Carried. Reports or minutes of committees. I note that several reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillor wishes to view them. Councilor reports. Councillors, any matters to report? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 27th of June, I attended the Longwarry Coorup Flood Protection meeting, where the discussion centres around the drains around the swamp, the maintenance of the drains, the development within townships and the impact that's going to have on drains. General discussion, some actions come out of it for Melbourne Water, but all in all, it's mainly information sessions. We do get farmers that do attend, and they do have their say in respect of their drains, the cleaning out of the drain, what it's doing to their property and the potential for flooding. That's looked at quite intensively. Also attended the Together We Can fundraiser at Outlook on the 4th of July, which was a great event. We had guest speakers there, and I think we all appreciated the input from those guest speakers in respect of the Together We Can movement. I won the raffle, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in. It's been noticed. And my wife took half. And then on the 11th of July, I attended the Biosphere Committee at Bunjil Place, which is a committee that consists of, it's a Biosphere Committee board actually, and it's supported by the 5 councils. This council is one of them, who throw in, I think, $25,000 per annum, which helps to support the biosphere. They had some good news that they were getting $100,000 per year from the federal government for the next 3 years, which was good news for them. And what it's all about, the Western Port biosphere is how man coexists with the environment, so to speak. And the Western Port biosphere is very important. It's 1 of 9 in Australia that's UNESCO backed. There's quite a few throughout the world, but there's only 9 in Australia, and the Western Port biosphere is one of them. And one of the interesting things is the condition of Western Port Bay is so critical to the environment as far as Western Port goes, with the mud flats, mangroves, and the seagrasses, which is important to the migratory birds that fly to Russia. They coexist with man on Western Port, and that has to be kept pristine for those birds to survive. The airport was brought up, the planes coming in over Western Port. What will that do to the bay, if anything? Is it going to be in the impact statement, environmental impact statement? That will be taken back to the board for comment and to make inquiry regarding the airport and what impact the aircraft flying over the bay might do. So that's about all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Well said. Any other speakers? Councillor Carol Ryan. Yes, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a few things I was involved in over the last month. I was luckily enough, invited to the Cardinia Casey Indian Women's Association Gala. And when they say gala, it sure is a gala. I got there with a couple of other local MPs, and we're a little bit underdressed actually. A lot of the tiaras came out and the sparkly dresses, and it was about women and women in taking initiative over their own lives, and also helping women that have been in unfortunate situations that need the support. Absolutely fantastic night. The food was lovely but very hot, so luckily enough I had a milk drink, so that was all right. I encourage anyone to go and learn their culture. We also had the privilege of learning Bollywood dancing that night, so that was very interesting. Don't know if I was very good at it, but it was fun. But every Thursday night they have it lessons, and it's on at the Masala Bar and Grill in Berwick. So if anyone wants to learn Bollywood, and that's men as well, that's the place to go. So absolutely wonderful environment, and we do have some of the people that work there from the Sikh community, so it was lovely to catch up with them as well. Also attended the blood bank, and always important to give blood if you can, because the blood banks are always low, and it's an important thing to save someone's life, or to know that you're part of someone's life. You don't realise it until you're in that situation of having a blood transfusion, that without that you wouldn't survive. So if you're able to, fellow councillors, please give blood. It's really an important issue. I also went to a ballroom dancing competition locally, and this was about children, about self-esteem, and it's also another form of sport. and we don't probably look at it that way, but it is classified as a sport, and it's a very national sport that's recognised in Olympic Games as well. To see the children go from low self-esteem to forcing their body to be straight and confident and get out there and not only enjoy the night but have the support of the organisers. And so again, I support, again, local sport. That's something different, but I'd like to see a lot more of it. And last but not least, Councillor Schilling and myself have a thing called Street Talk, and we do it fortnightly. And we go down the main street of Pakenham, and we're down there. Well, usually we aim for an hour, but it's usually longer than an hour, isn't it? And it gives people in our community an opportunity to talk to us and present any concerns that they have for council, and we can redirect them to the right departments that they need to. We also explain to them in reference to the officer's position and what their roles are and what our role is as a councillor. But we also, we did have a gentleman there that needed our support, and we passed on the information that he needed. So he was just so relieved the fact that we were there and we were open. He felt safe to talk to us, and it's about community involvement and not be afraid to talk to people that really are in need and need our support. So if you're looking forward to meeting up with us councillors again in a fortnight's time, we'll be down in the main street. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan, for your colourful report. Any other speakers? Any other councillors to report? Councillor Brett on. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in June, councillors were invited to attend with council officers Knox Gardens Reserve in Wantirna to inspect some modular buildings, and it was a really thought-provoking, and I'm really interested in this subject. So down at Wantirna, the Knox Council has installed modular type development for a pavilion at a sporting reserve, and it looked fantastic. I was impressed. We learnt that such a modular development saves approximately 40% of the cost of construction. How it works for this project was that it took 17 weeks to build the module, 17 weeks in the factory, and it took 4 weeks on site. The rooms look very modern, practical, very clean. Despite being operational for 18 months, it was like brand new. It was fantastic. This also included veranda and decking. So change rooms, storage, canteen, I believe. So thank you to the officers and also Knox Council. I'm really passionate about what this may mean for Cardinia if we go down this path. And councillors, I'm attending a further forum at the I think it's Leisure Victoria at Sunbury. They've got a forum that goes for 2.5 hours on Wednesday the 31st of July. It's a local government type thing. Parks and Leisure Australia are presenting on this, so I'm booked in to go. I just think it's a way to go, look at things differently. It won't suit all reserves, but for little pocket reserves, I think this is the way to go. We know the costs that these new pavilions will cost our council, our community, our ratepayers. And if we look outside the square and for the appropriate reserves, I think this is the way forward. So, councillors, if you're interested, please let me know and I'll book you in as well. So I think it's definitely worth looking at. And I know our council officers are really interested in this option going forward. So listen to this space. I attended last week on the 9th of July the Emerald and District Rotary Club changeover dinner, and it was fantastic to welcome Catherine Alphick to the new president of Emerald Rotary. Catherine's a fantastic person and she'll do a fantastic job in that role. But I also want to thank Ian Ash. Most people would know Ian Ash. He's done a fantastic job in the 12 months as outgoing president, so thank you to Ian and good luck to Catherine. The Emerald Rotary is an amazing group, as we've mentioned before about Rotaries, but they raised over $40,000 towards the Monash Children's Hospital, and that was working with council for with the kids' fun run against Thomas in Gembrook each year. They conduct a major raffle for all community groups in the Shire. So they offer a car for sale, and each community group can elect to be part of that raffle, and every $2 that from every ticket they sell goes back into that community group. They make a total % profit of that. So I know kindergartens that I've been associated with have been involved in that. So that raised thousands and thousands of dollars. So thank you, Emerald Rotary. Just want to congratulate Councillor Collin Ross. The VLGA had a recent election where it was hotly contested with a large number of councillors across Victoria nominated for that election. Only 6 positions, and you were elected in that. So, Councillor Ross, congratulations, and I know you'll represent Cardinia very well in that forum, but particular interface councillors, I think you're the only interface councillor on that board. So, thank you, and I'll look forward to hearing further reports in that role in the future. And just lastly, Rangers Ward councillors attended the Eastern Dandenong Rangers Business and Tourism breakfast that the 3 of us attended, and also Miss Jeffs was a guest speaker, and she was warmly welcome, and it was great to hear from you, Carol, in that forum. But we learnt a little bit about a few new businesses, including Carly and Stu from the new Emerald Lake paddle boat owners. Long-standing family business that's recently changed hands, and they've got a sort of vision to increase that business. So we look forward to what that will look like at the Emerald Lake. We heard from other businesses. Obviously, we heard from Edra. We signed a MOU, which council will financially support that Eastern Dandenong Rangers Business and Tourism over a 3-year period. So they were very excited about that partnership with Cardinia Shire. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other councillors want to speak about reports? Councillor Ross.
I've just got a few things to report. On the Metro Waste and Resource Recovery Group board, we've got 32 councils represented. It's a forum where councils get to have their say in relation to waste, which the group produces 80% of Victoria's residential waste out of the 32 councils. I must say there's some exciting developments coming along there. We had the group come along in the past to talk about the process at looking at some modern up-to-date facilities. To cut a really long story short, which people will hear more over time, we in Victoria had it too good for too long. We used to have people who would come and not only pick up our recycling rubbish for nothing, they would pay us to do it. And we were we were getting $35 a tonne for them to come and pick it up and take it away. Only Western Australia was getting $5 a tonne in their metropolitan area, and everyone else was paying for it. We had endless supplies of quarries and different facilities to take it away to. People were selling it. And then when China decided to do what they promised to do for the last 5 or 6 years and stop importing everyone else's polluted rubbish, they pulled the pin and they said, we've got enough of our own. So therefore we went from getting a cheque coming in for our recycled waste to having to pay. I believe this is an amazingly dynamic space. With disruption like this becomes great opportunity, and it allows Victoria to come into the 20th century in this area and develop some things or go and source recycling options that will deliver for the community, the green community, and also in a sustainable way without going to landfill. There's to be more in that space coming as the process goes through. On the VLGA, I must say it's an honour to get elected on the board. To get on the board, there's 43 member councils. I rang every one of them except the City of Melbourne because they don't give out mobile phone numbers. so I couldn't ring those people. I rang, I think, 250 councillors from all councils, so I wanted to know what the councillors were thinking that the VLGA either did well, what they didn't do well, and what they might be able to do in future to assist the community. I must say, not only am I there to represent all people, that it's most importantly that I'm there to represent our council with our needs. I was once taught by a boss I had in the past that you merely don't go to things to attend, you go there to get involved, because that's how decisions are made. And if you get involved, you're there at the cutting face, the coal face when decisions are made. So therefore, that's one thing. And I must say, Councillor Owen hit it on the head. All the way, I think there was something like 16 people nominated. And out of the 16 people, there was only 3 south of the Yarra River going all the way to New South Wales or Mornington Peninsula. One was in Port Phillip, another one was in Kingston, and we were the only interface council that connected with peri-urbans or had an idea about urban areas. So I think that gives a great opportunity to share the benefits that we can see that we've been able to obtain as an interface council, and share that with other people, and also prosecute the case. That the benefit is really big, it is really important, and it needs to keep coming. I must say I attended with the Mayor and Councillor Wilmot, and I can't remember who else, the Refugee Week and Migrant Week. It was the opening of their hub down there, where there's a migrant hub that's been opened specially for services to come into the area at Living Learning in Pakenham. It was a great opportunity to meet new residents of the community who bring amazing colour, and their heart is just to build the community. They want to become the fabric of our society, and when they share some of their stories, you know these people come just wanting to improve their lives and to improve our lives. And I know that our community has an enormously big heart. I attended the 150th anniversary of the Berwick Church of Christ. 150 years for any organisation to be involved is an amazingly long time, and they shared some of their history. It was well represented by many, many councillors, politicians and the community. I acknowledge that. NAIDOC Week, the Mayor and myself went down to the library the other day, and they had the Reconciliation Action Plan draft with some questions for community comment down there, and it was really, really good. I mean, the amazing thing about a reconciliation action plan is the fact that it has actions connected to the plan. So therefore you can clearly see things, as Councillor Brown has shown us, that you need some deliverables that are measurable, so you know whether you're actually doing what you've promised to do. And that's one thing I did notice in these actions. There were deliverables that need to be delivered, so we know that it is being successful and delivered. And I'll just finish on the note that I attended the Cardinia Interfaith Council, which I've been group here that's coordinated by council but run by the community. I must say their motto is respect, understanding, unity and acceptance. I don't think I've ever seen a more collaborative group that come from different backgrounds who actually want to add colour to our community. Out of that group, you would have seen the amount of events that have come out of this group who moved to our area, who absolutely not only want to bring colour and new events to our area, they support our old events. Like Australia Day, they bring free food, and they bring it in that much you can't even eat it all. They get involved. We've got a Citizen of the Year who's come out of the new migrant group as well. I mean, these people are amazing people. They come to add to our society, and I just believe that, they bring a colour that only new people with enthusiasm can bring. So I think that's a wonderful group, and I look forward to seeing what they're going to do in the future. They all come together as a group. They work very well together. So there in all is my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross, and for helping me with my report. You've half done my report as well, and it's very good, Councillor Ross. Any other speakers? Okay, I'd just like to say a couple of things, quick things. The blood bank idea is a really nice idea, Councillor Ryan. Thank you very much. I mean, I congratulate my brave wife, Sue, because what's very important is Sue's a type 0, and type O is very important. Those type bloods that are very rare are very important for people to give blood in those certain circumstances. So I must reinforce your comment. And I'm going to speak at the Emerald Rotary Club next month. They're going to have an extended end time, especially for me. I guess I'm going to speak for a lot longer than they usually would. But I'm going to highlight just one particular thing that was on the other day, which was on the last Saturday. The CEO and I, and Councilor Owen was there in the stands. We attended, and I had the proud honour of opening the Special Olympics again in Winter Olympics in Cardinia Shire at Cardinia Life. Now that event is something to behold. The excitement of those people that go to play basketball in our stadium is just really amazing place to be, and I was so proud to represent our community, my councillors as well, to open that particular event. And it was amazing. I'm just going to tell you one thing that happened there, just a little event that happened. There was a basketballer playing on the stadium, and unfortunately the young girl had cerebral palsy, and she was bouncing the basketball down the basketball stadium, and they were just letting her bounce it down with two hands. She got down to the end and threw the ball. It was in the ring, and threw the ball at the ring and missed. The opposition player gave her the ball back and gave her another shot. Now I can tell you, we've got a lot to learn from that community. I mean, we see a lot of aggression in our sporting areas and whatever. That's a lesson that should have been taken on camera and shown at every sporting facility in our shire, because it was a really tear-jerking moment, and that was all special. It was really special to be there. I was glad to be there with the CEO there with our community, so it was great. And they come all the way from Mildura. They come from all over Victoria to come and play in our stadium. Our stadium. The umpires all donate their time. The officials, Align Leisure did just a fantastic job of organising the place and getting it all ready, and for that particular event. So I commend them to come back and back and back again. That's just one event that out of my month, but that is probably a special event in my particular month. So that was a special moment. Thank you, councillors. Okay, and reminder that councillors and staff will be available, of course, to the gallery after the meeting if you wish to discuss responses. Sorry, I've jumped a page, haven't I? Sorry, I jumped a page. Yes, okay. So, thanks, Doug. Mr. Evans, you've revived me again. I got all emotional in that moment and I missed a page. I'm sorry, gallery and councillors. So we've got any presentations of petitions this evening, councillors, to be tabled? No petitions. Okay, this is the important part. We go to community question time. We have received a question from Mr. Jack Mitchell, and I see my friend Jack Mitchell in the gallery. It's nice to see you here, Jack. I'll refer your question to Tracy Parker, Mrs. Parker, General Manager, Livability Communities, to read the question and answer. Ms. Parker, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. So the question is, it has come to my attention that the long-term future of food relief to residents of the Shire is facing an uncertain future and supply may not be assured. It is understood a task force has been established by Council to which the writer has been invited. However, the most recent meeting scheduled for Thursday, July the 4th was cancelled due to a number of apologies. As this service has been operated by the 4Cs, Cardinia Combined Churches Caring, for close to 20 years, a facility and service relied on by a significant number of families when faced by circumstances out of their control. So the three questions were, why has the need for the task force been established? Question 2 was, what is the current status of the investigation? And question 3 was, is there a level of urgency to ensure continuity of service? Sorry about that. So just just one thing, I know it wasn't your question, but the meeting of the 4th of July was cancelled, but has been rescheduled to this Friday. So it was just that there was a number of apologies, and obviously we wanted to have everybody around the table. In response to your question, so the first one was why the need for the task force. So Council is very committed to ensuring that emergency food relief is available within Cardinia Shire. Council works closely with the 4Cs to ensure that food relief is available when needed. Late last year, the 4Cs were unable to deliver the Christmas hamper program that they normally run. As a result, Council undertook the Christmas hamper program at a cost of $50,000 to ensure that service was provided. We also gave an additional funding to the 4Cs to continue their vital work, which was at a value of an additional $45,000. To ensure the ongoing delivery of emergency food relief, Council has established the Emergency Relief Task Force, which is made up of 12 organisations. This is really a proactive approach to seeking long-term stability and sustainability of emergency relief programs across the Shire. The purpose of the task force is to identify the current food and financial relief programs, recognise challenges in the emergency relief area, consider the future need of Cardinia's growing population, and explore opportunities to work together towards a future model of operation that benefits all the organisations. So question 2 related to the current status of the investigation. Bit unsure on your question there, other than to say that we have no investigation per se in place. This is purely about us working together to identify a collective model of operation that will be benefit to all its members. So the task force objectives are around working collaboratively together to identify existing models of operation, to consider all options and unanimously decide the best model course of action moving forward, to source funding opportunities from government, businesses, philanthropic agencies and share this knowledge, to advocate to DHHS and DSS for financial support, service delivery, and to continue to advocate for volunteers and sources for volunteers. Your last question was around the level of urgency. I guess we just want to keep these ongoing discussions going with a number of organisations, including the 4Cs, to ensure that we have both a short and a long-term solution to this growing need within our community.
Mr. Mitchell, Jack, you can have that answer in writing if you prefer. Okay. Ms. Parker, could you organise a written up answer to that for Mr. Mitchell to take to the meeting of the task force if you wanted to take that to there? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Next, we have received a question from Wilma Van Eek. And I notice that Wilma is in the gallery. Thank you for your question. I'll refer your question to Peter Benezik, General Manager of Infrastructures and Environment, to read the question and answer. Thank you.
Through you,
Mayor.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. As the Treasurer of the Cardinia Art Society, I'm concerned with the additional financial cost to small community groups in running large events in the Cardinia Shire, requiring the maximum number of temporary signage to advertise their event. $20 per sign is an additional cost that volunteer groups will need to raise. Will the Council be open to alternate methods to identify approved signs and permit dates, thus reducing the cost associated with the permit application? Thank you. In response, the administration cost of $20 is designed for council officers to inspect the locations and ensure that the signs are placed in appropriate locations. It certainly doesn't cover the costs of the administration process. The $20, Research has shown that in general, the signages that are put in place are generally of real estate nature and supported by sponsors and not necessarily the appropriate or the event organisers as such. But however, Council is eager to hear any submissions and any alternative methodologies that might alleviate the cost, and we'd certainly encourage submissions. Submissions close on the 31st of July, and the submissions can be made via Council's website.
Thank you, Mr. Bezenik. Do you like this answer in writing as well, Ms. Van Eyck? Okay, is that okay, Peter? Can you organise that in writing? And we do encourage the community all round to submit to this policy, which is out at the moment for the signed policy that's out at the moment. Right, final question, a similar question received from Ms. Ronald. I acknowledge and see that Julian Ronald is in our gallery tonight. Again, I refer to your question to Peter Benezik to read the question and answer. Thank you, Mr. Benezik.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. In preparation, sorry, I'm reading the same question. Oh, my apologies for that. Sorry, that is the right question. In preparation for the art show, Pakenham submission regarding the temporary community advertising policy, I seek clarifications on the following questions. 1. Can the draft policy that is relevant to road reserves include event venues in the list of approved locations? Question 2, how does placing an impost of $20 per sign support community groups in their activities? 3, how will this policy relate to towns not listed in the approved locations? Thank you. In response, the temporary community advertising policy relates to the orderly display of advertising signs in road reserves. Signage on event venues or private land is governed by different legislation and cannot be enforced under the local law. Council is proposing to establish an administration fee of $20 per sign instead of the current structure of $20 per application. This administration fee is proposed to be charged to assist in the cost associated with processing applications, undertaking safety audits of signage and following up with enforcement activity. In most cases, the fee is paid by a private company, e.g. real estate agents who are sponsoring the events, not the community group. The temporary community advertising policy reflects a need for an orderly display of signs in the central corridor and hills area, as these areas are much sought after by community groups and can cause conflict. However, the policy will continue to be used to provide guidance for the whole municipality when assessing requests. Consultation on the review of the temporary community advertising policy closes on the 31st of July. If not already, I would encourage you to visit the Council's website and provide support or provide feedback to the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benezik. I will get Mr. Benezik to send your reply to the answers in writing, and I really recommend that you submit to the temporary advertising policy, which is out at the moment, closing on the 31st of July, to put your thing in place. Okay, so but you'll get it in writing. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'll go back to the last page. A reminder that councillors and staff will be available, of course, after the meeting tonight, if you wish, to discuss the questions and answers and discuss responses provided to these questions. That concludes tonight's proceedings. Thank you all for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, gallery, for your attendance. Thank you.